Thank you for being so engaged in this conversation. It's my great personal honor, and on behalf of the FI Institute, to welcome on stage His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I don't know how you were able to find 10-15 minutes for us in your very busy schedule of the week.
Yeah. Well, Richard, for you, always, and of course for FII, I always have time.
Thank you very much, Your Highness. Your Highness, we have here in the room a group of different stakeholders. You have investors, you have young people, media leaders, experts, Nobel laureates, and since this morning, 8 o'clock, we're debating on what are the priorities of our humanity. But Your Highness, allow me in 1 minute to brief you on what we did at the FI Institute, because I know you had a very busy week, so we're not able to share with you the result of a big survey that we conducted worldwide. 13 countries, 50% of the population, and all genders, all social classes. And we ask one question: what is your priority? Because we think at the FI Institute what is important is to listen to our humanity. And I don't know if it will be a surprise for you, but the number one priority is cost of living. And the three others are related to financial security. Climate change, which I know was debated a lot at the UNGA, and other issues are 7 and 8. What do you think this means for you and for leaders?
I think it's very interesting, and I think it tells us that we need to refocus our priorities as politicians, and we need to address these concerns, because clearly the world's population is interested mostly in their livelihoods. And we need to focus on, Vision 2030 is very much focused on, in the kingdom, delivering sustainable prosperity for the Saudi people. And I think that needs to be the driving agenda for us in the global community. How can we better work together? How can we foster more cooperation? How can we focus on an agenda that delivers sustainable development prosperity for all? Because if we don't, geopolitical risks increase significantly. The risks that we do not deliver on the aspirations of the people of the world increase. So it's very interesting that this result that I heard, because it doesn't reflect right now in the global agenda, in the global political agenda enough, and we need to work better towards addressing these concerns. I think we are entering a very polarized time, and this polarization is driving us in directions that are not going to serve these goals that you just outlined that the people clearly have. When we talk about political polarization, that reduces cooperation. It reduces the potential for innovation. So it's a very interesting result that you had, and it should be a wake-up call to us, diplomats and politicians.
Your Highness, another outcome of the survey shows something quite, I would not say interesting, but challenging. But the world is divided, but really divided, which means that when you see the map, you have almost a border, and by coincidence, the border is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Arabic Peninsula. Everything which is west of this peninsula, including Africa, 77% are pessimistic, while everything from the Arabic Peninsula to the east is 77% optimistic of our future. What is your reaction on that, Your Highness? Is it surprise? Do you think leaders are conscious of this or not?
So I'm not surprised that Saudi Arabia is optimistic, but of course I'm biased. But I am concerned, because if half of the global community is pessimistic, that we need to worry, because that means that half of the global community feels left out. And we need to work to make sure that we are all part of a process that moves forward, because if people are not optimistic, they disengage. And if we start to see half of the global community disengage, not become aspiring towards a better future, this carries enormous risk, not just a geopolitical risk, because obviously people, when they are dissatisfied, can turn to all kinds of remedies to that dissatisfaction, but it also reduces economic activity, the potential for economic integration. So I think we need to work together collectively as a global community to make sure that all people, I mean, hope is a key theme that I always try to return to. We need to give people hope. If people have hope for a better future, I think we automatically build a better planet. But as soon as people start losing hope, and here the responsibility, of course, is on governments and leaders to make sure that they facilitate an environment where that hope exists. So when it comes to the geopolitical stage, we need to be focused on conflict resolution. We need to be focused on cooperation, not polarization. You know, this idea of global powers now focusing on competition and on confrontation will only increase this polarization, will only I think, increase the potential for people losing hope. So we need to change direction, I think.
Your Highness, can you share with us what are the main outcomes of this 2022 UN General Assembly?
You know, UN General Assemblies rarely have deliverable, succinct outcomes, and I don't think this one will be much different. But one of the interesting things that we can see is that there is a consensus that we have a lack of effective conflict resolution mechanisms, and that multilateralism is losing steam. We need ideas to fix that. We need to get engaged to work towards that. And you know, I come back to this theme of polarization. That polarization is detrimental to addressing those issues. So I would say the UNGA is reflective of the survey you just mentioned. About half of them are optimistic, half of them are pessimistic, but there is too much pessimism in the world. And the only way we can address that pessimism is by actually lifting up our sleeves and trying to solve problems.
Your Highness, I had the privilege to work with you when you were in Washington. I know you were also in Germany. You are a diplomat by career. Now, mashallah, you are leading the diplomacy of the kingdom. And sometime we had this conversation about everything has to be reinvented. And one day you told me we need also to reinvent diplomacy. What do you think we should do?
Well, you know, I have the benefit of being a recent diplomat. I was a businessman before, so I can, you know, I am allowed to be a bit cynical about my profession. And I think diplomacy, as it is now, is broken. It's not working. It's not delivering. You know, we are too set in rigid practices and ways and in formalities rather than actually getting down to business and solving problems. We are too focused on positioning and having national statements and things like that rather than being practical and finding compromises. So that's, I think, where we need to do more work. I think we can be much more engaged as diplomats in preempting solutions rather than waiting till a problem has developed, has festered, has become an international crisis. Some preventive diplomacy can be helpful. I think there needs to be a very deep conversation about how we can be more effective in the diplomatic community, and I hope that you know, that's something we can contribute to in the kingdom.
Your Highness, one of the very important topics which came from the survey and related to cost of living, and it was debated here all day, is food security. Is this a topic which is addressed by leaders?
It's a topic that is discussed. So we talk a lot about food security.
But do we have solutions?
Exactly, this is the issue. Do we have solutions? So, you know, we have short-term solutions. We were able, the global community was able to solve, for instance, the issue of Ukrainian grain shipments. That's good, but it only addresses part of the problem. You know, we spent half of last year talking about the issue of Ukrainian grain. We hardly talked about the issue of fertilizers, for instance, despite if you ask any expert in agriculture, they would have told you 6 months ago that there is a looming crisis in fertilizer. We still haven't really addressed the crisis on fertilizer availability, and you know, we risk significant crop losses in developing countries, countries that rely on imports of fertilizer if we don't work actively to address it. Some countries have voiced concerns about it. We, in the context of the G20, have supported initiatives to address the global fertilizer crisis, but I think it's not yet at the level of concern that there is. And this is, again, goes back, we are not active enough in preventive diplomacy. We wait till a crisis becomes truly global, truly impactful, before we even actively address it. And you know, that just doesn't work. If we don't do it early, the cost becomes too high, it becomes insurmountable, and it becomes a true crisis.
Back to your previous life, Your Highness, there is something which was also, for me personally, very surprising. We got an outcome that 50% of the employees worldwide have in mind the possibility to quit their jobs in the next 12 months. How do you react to that? You know, the great resignation will potentially become a massive resignation.
I think that's very concerning because that indicates an extreme level of discontent. And that discontent, if not addressed, will have implications. It will have implications on societies, it will have implications on the global economy. And again, we need to give people hope. And I talked earlier about hope. Clearly, it appears there is a lack of hope that is spreading. What are we doing about it? You know, we are talking about issues that are not immediately relevant. We are not being dynamic enough as a global community with these crisis developments. We are not engaged enough. We need to be more engaged. We need to be more responsive to the concerns of the public. We need to be more responsive to 50%, and we talked about this divide, about half and half. So this half and half divide seems to be a theme. And if you look at the global community of nations, well over half of them don't have a clear path to a sustainable prosperity. And part of that is because we are not working together to ensure that there is a fair access to resources, a fair access to capital, a fair access to knowledge and know-how. In the end, if we don't do that, some may benefit in the short term, but in the long term, it will affect all of us very negatively.
The number one threat which came from the survey is a potential social crisis, which even go to social revolution. What do you think leaders should do to prevent that?
I'll return back to the theme, hope. If you don't give people hope, if you don't give people a sustainable pathway to prosperity, they will inevitably despair. And it's important that we work towards that. And whether it's something like resolving conflicts and being serious about resolving conflicts in a way that's fair to all involved, rather than rigid positioning and moral stances that are not translatable to the situation in the ground, whether it is issues of access to resources, access to food security, etc. If we're not active in solving all of these problems, people will just give up and they will decide to go away.
Which role the kingdom is playing on the international discussion and global conversation? The G20 will be soon in Indonesia. The kingdom has a strong voice thanks to also Vision 2030, which is very highly regarded globally and in some countries even imitated. So what role the kingdom could play in the global scene just to address these challenges and to share best practices?
So we're very proud that some have decided to emulate Vision 2030. The leadership, when His Royal Highness the Crown Prince launched Vision 2030, he had a clear roadway. He wanted to build a sustainable pathway to prosperity for the long term for the Saudi people. We believe very strongly that all peoples have the right to that pathway, and if they get that pathway to a sustainable prosperity, it benefits all of us. And the kingdom has, in its foreign policy, put in front of it the responsibility of sending that message. We are advocating for a very strong multilateral international cooperation in the area of economic cooperation. We should focus on, again, securing hope. If we cannot give our people hope, if we cannot help other countries give their people hope, we will all end up losing. So that is the key priority.
So, Your Highness, I know that your time is very limited today, but allow me to ask you a last question. We have a lot of youth here in the room, and we have a lot watching us on live stream, precisely about hope. What would be the message that you would address to the young? How they can get hope? And why they should be full of hope and optimism?
I believe that we have, as a collective, as a planet, a bright future ahead of us. There is so much going on that is positive, that is unfortunately overshadowed by the negative. The negative is built up by the media. I'm sorry if there are folks from the media here, but that's the reality.
Chatham House rules.
Yeah. We build up all of this negativity. We focus on all of these crises rather than seeing all of the wonderful things that is going on. There's fantastic innovation going on. There's whether it's green energy, whether it's AI, biotech. There is a bright future being built by many, and if we just focused on all of these positive streams and encouraged them and encouraged youth to get engaged in them, I think they would find a lot to be hopeful about and a lot that they can aspire to. We need to lead by example, of course, and we need to try and galvanize the community to work together to empower the youth to work towards these success stories that are present, and we need to highlight them. I mean, obviously, we cannot ignore the crises that exist. We cannot ignore the challenges that we have, and we need to be serious about addressing them. But we need to also be optimistic, because we are justifiably optimistic. We can see in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you are very familiar, of course, you come a lot. I hope those here that are not will come and visit. But there is a real optimism in the kingdom, despite the challenges that we face. We are in a difficult neighborhood. We are needing to improve many things in our economy, in our country, but we are working very hard at it, and that hard work is paying off. We are seeing results every day being delivered. If we all did the same, if we all put our minds to it and worked hard, we can build a better future. So that's in the kingdom, youth engagement is at an all-time high. You go to anywhere, private sector or public sector, the youth are really who are leading. It's the same in my ministry. The youth are the younger generation are the ones that are pushing us.
And more women now.
And more women, of course. Women's participation in the workforce, is up about 300%. So there is an optimism. And you can, even in a challenging environment with not the best resource, you can build if you set your mind to it, if you have a leadership that is committed to it, and you have a collective will to do it. So you just need the will.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please a round of applause for His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan. Thank you again. Thank you very much, Your Highness.
Thank you very much.
It was a privilege to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.